I've had a lot of fun with this Characters in John series, and we get to finish it up today. And we're finishing it up with probably one of my favorite encounters in John. And I think it's probably because we can all relate, I think, at this point. We can all relate with the character we're going to talk about today. You know, we commonly say, and I know I've talked about this before, but we often say, you know, that if I had been there, I would have believed, you know. I automatically would have known who he was. I would have believed him. I would have followed him, you know. I would have been there at the cross. But how easily would it have been to be standing with the Pharisees also, thinking that he was crazy. This man was out of his mind. I mean, because we're talking 3 years, a lot of these disciples walked with him, approximately 3 years. And then once he came back, after 3 days of being dead, they still questioned who he was. To the point that the disciples, some of them believed, went to the other disciples and said, "Hey, Jesus is alive." And one of them said, "I won't believe it until I can put my finger in the holes on his hand and put my hand in his side." Anybody know who that was? Thomas. Now, that's who we're going to talk about today. Because I think we've all been at that point in our life, or sometimes we still get there, where there's just some things we doubt. We have this sense of doubt about us. And so let's read that story of Thomas for just a moment here. John chapter 20, starting at verse 24. It says, "Now Thomas was one of the 12, was not with the disciples when Jesus came to them. So the other disciples told him, 'We've seen the Lord.' But he said to them, 'Unless I see the nail marks in his hand, and put my finger where the nails were, and put my hand into his side, I will not believe.' A week later, his disciples were in the house again, and Thomas was with them. Though the doors were locked, Jesus came and stood among them and said, 'Peace be with you.' Then he said to Thomas, 'Put your finger here. See my hands? Reach out your hand and put it into my side. Stop doubting and believe.' Thomas said to him, 'My Lord and my God.' Then Jesus told him, 'Because you have seen me, you have believed. Blessed are those who have not seen and yet have believed.' Jesus performed many other signs in the presence of his disciples, which are not recorded in this book. But these are written that you may believe that Jesus is the Messiah, the Son of God, and that by believing you may have life in him." I don't know if I've ever asked you, do any of you know who Anye Boyegiu is? Does that name ring a bell to anybody? Well, good, so I haven't told you this one. This is one of my probably favorite illustrations. Professional Christian, but she was racked by emotional vacuum in her relationship with God, as she put it in her diary. She also wrote, "The more I want God, the less I am wanted." And then sometime later, she wrote, "Such deep longing for God and repulsed, empty, no faith, no love, no zeal. Heaven means nothing." You know, we don't find those thoughts that earth-shattering. But Anya was no ordinary Christian. She's actually one of the most influential believers of our time, and she preached to peasants and presidents. You know her as Mother Teresa. Now those words become a little more earth-shocking and shattering. So how many doubts do you have? How many doubts do I have? Do we have? Are there certain doctrines in the Bible that we have a problem with? Or perhaps you wonder sometimes if there is really a God. And how do we deal with those doubts? You know, that's a tough one, because sometimes that doubt is what wrecks us, spiritually and emotionally. You know, the ancient world, those who walked with Jesus had doubts as well. You know, we often picture them as simpletons, one who believed just about anything that came down the pipe to him. But as we see here, several disciples throughout this time of resurrection doubted who Jesus was. The neat part about Thomas, though, is in John chapter 11 and in John chapter 14, both Thomas is depicted as being a very loyal person. Rather outspoken. But here he is. You say he's alive, but I won't believe until. Guys, doubting is normal. Having doubts is part of our life. Okay? I mean, just the other day, I picked up somebody's chair. I said, hey, I don't know whose chair it is. Can I borrow it? And they said, sure. I said, even though I might break it. You know, anymore, at my size, I doubt a lot of chairs. Okay? I doubt them. I second guess them. Whether they're going to hold, check, it's not that funny. Anyway, whether they're going to hold me or not. You know? But it's true because all my life, you can ask my wife, I've used this faith illustration with people. You know, you have faith in a lot of things in your life. One of those being the table or the chair at your dinner table. I have yet to go eat dinner with anybody in my life that they grab their chair, give it a few shakes, and then, all right, we're good, we can sit down and eat dinner now. No, you have faith that thing's going to hold you. There's no doubt in your mind. Doubting is normal, guys. We go through life and there's things we doubt constantly. And it's no different when it comes to our faith. We're going to have doubts. We're going to have things that we second guess and we question. And that's normal. The Bible doesn't warn against doubt. Many in the Bible express doubt. Job, Jeremiah, Jesus. Thomas is not sinning by having a doubt. Jesus never rebuked him. Okay? In this time with him, he never rebuked him. Instead, he come in the room and said, here, do exactly what you wanted to do so that you have no doubt. Take the test. I can only imagine Thomas's face when Jesus quoted him word for word. You know, walks in a locked room. Okay, this is already stun number one. Somebody just come in this room, that door's locked. How'd they get in? Right? And then he looks at Thomas and says, come. Put your finger in my wound. Put your hand in my side so that you believe. I want you to have no doubt. I want you to know without a doubt, Thomas, that I am alive. I mean, doubt is just an expression of our uncertainty. There are things in the Bible that we are uncertain of. Do I believe the Bible is true? Yes. Do I know who the author of Hebrews is? No. There is a lot of debate in our world today as to who wrote the book of Hebrews. It's uncertainty. Our doubts and our belief are very much compatible. One of the neat things about doubt and belief is that your doubt should bring questions. That question should bring the desire for an answer. Those doubts should bring a desire for an answer. Well, let's think about this. We think about kids in school or kids at home. They don't believe what mom and dad said, or they don't believe what the teacher said. What do? I got a question. How does 2 + 2 equal 4? Explain this to me. Okay. Why is I the letter for imaginary numbers? You know, and I love both math teachers because it is. It just is. I is the letter we use. But the doubt brings about questions that we should seek the answer for. That we should go, I got a question. I really need to talk to you about this. I'm uncertain. I've got some doubts. I would like some answers. Now then, we get to the point in our life where it's, I got a question. Oh, hey, before you can answer that, I got another question. Hey, before you can answer, I got another question. And God's, what do you want the answer to? You know? Sometimes we forget to stop and let God speak to us and let Him give the answer. And a lot of times, we get into this world where we believe that our doubt and our belief can't go together, that they're not compatible. And we a lot of times hear people say, I don't believe in the Bible. Well, why not? I'm a skeptic. I don't believe it's true. Well, have you ever read it? No, not really. I told you. I'm a skeptic and I don't believe it. Skepticism is not an answer for evasion. I can tell you right now, if that's true, I'm going to tell you a lot of my history books. I don't believe in my history books. Why? Well, I just didn't read them. I don't believe them. Man, that's not true. You can't just evade it because you don't want to believe it. Jesus once met a father who was desperate to have his son healed. And he asked Jesus to do it if he could. And the hesitancy that he had prompted Jesus to ask him if he believed. And the man responded, I do believe. Help me with my unbelief. Abraham Lincoln was one of the only presidents who never joined a church. During political campaigns, he was often challenged about his faith or his lack thereof. And he once responded, probably it is my lot to go on in the twilight, feeling and reasoning my way through life as questioning, doubting Thomas did. But in my poor, maimed way, I bear with me as I go on, seeking a spirit of desire for a faith that was with him of olden time, who in his need, as I in mine, exclaimed, help thou my unbelief. Honest doubt is much better than dishonest faith. Honest doubt is much better than dishonest faith. I think we as Christians need to learn to ask the serious questions. Because the world does. The world around us are going to ask those questions for us. So we need to learn to ask them, to be able to answer them without a doubt. So what does doubt look like? Well, in my simple form, I'm going to tell you it exists in three forms in my head. First one just being unbelief. That something can't really happen that way, that it's not possible for it to exist in that manner. Deliberate denial, deliberate disobedience, and rebellion exist in this part. Doubt is the sincere question, but the unbelief is the unwillingness to hear the answer. You can doubt it, and your doubt should bring questions, but you should want to hear. You should strive to hear the answer. And then there's the intellectual scorn, or the blanket assertions that something is impossible. Laws of nature are often alluded to in this category. This is where people come to and they say science and religion can't mix because of intellectual scorn. Because of blanket statements. Because of denying the divine power of God. Guys, there's a ton of scientific research and stuff, and I know I get caught on this rabbit trail sometimes, a lot of times. There's a ton of scientific research that you can go look into that talks about the face of this earth drastically changing in about a month span. You can go look it up in non-Christian science journals and stuff. I can tell you how the face of this earth drastically changed in approximately 30 days. More like 40. That's a lot of water. a lot of runoff as it dried up, a lot of land moved, a lot of erosion, dirt put in places it wasn't before. And we've all seen what massive amounts of water can do as it sweeps through somewhere. Do you know our atomic clocks we have? They get off every once in a while. And scientists relate it back to a time when the world seems to have skipped a beat. And that's their best answer for it. I can tell you about a time in Scripture where the world actually stood still and just skipped a beat. These are things that intellectuals scorn just says, it's impossible, it can't happen. And then we, of course, have doubt that's caused by dash hope. And I think this is one we've all probably fell into a lot in our lives. Things didn't go the way we wanted. Our hopes got dashed and ruined. So we begin to doubt. We begin to doubt that this could ever happen or that. This can't be possible. I've prayed for it. It didn't come true. So where's God? You know, we prayed just earlier talking about this Macksville meeting that's going to go on in a little bit. But God's will be done. And guys, sometimes that's the scariest prayer you can have. Because your will and God's will may be on the opposite ends of the spectrum. And when you ask for God's will to be done, God sometimes looks at you and says, are you sure? Because you're not going to like this. You better take your big boy pants with you. Because it's going to sting a little. It's going to hurt. And several people, I know several, you know several, have walked away because of doubt dealt to them by the dashed hope of their prayers. God would never do this. That's a tough one. You know, and I'm sure you can find doubt in more forms than that. You know, but that's the three that I see a lot in my life. That's where I see doubt coming from a lot as I look around. But see, guys, here's the neat part about doubt. That doubt is what causes our faith to still be under construction. That doubt is what makes that song that God's still working on me from the time we're itty bitty until we leave this world so important. Is that our faith is under construction. Doubt can be grown out of, and faith can be grown into. When Thomas came to faith in that scripture we did, he came completely into faith. For a Jew in Thomas's time to cry out, "My Lord and my God." For a Jew to call another human, "My Lord, my God," is incredible. It's blasphemous to a Jew. Punishable by death. To look at another human and say, "My Lord, my God." When Thomas' doubt grew into faith, he jumped in wholeheartedly. Faith can change the entire direction of one's life. Faith can change the entire direction of one's life. Take them to places unknown, to spots unheard of. And when a doubt becomes faith, pretty incredible thing. When doubt is turned to faith, and we jump in completely. But you know, we still come to those in life, and sometimes this is us. That we still don't believe in spite of evidence. That we still struggle to believe even though the evidence is all around us. How many of you have ever seen the movie, Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? I kind of really like this movie. But anyway, George Clooney is in this movie, and he plays the main character. And on their journey through life, they get accused of some crimes. And now I can't think of the word of it. They get told their crimes are wipe free. Okay? And on their journey, well, they're headed back home. And on the way back home, the sheriff catches them. The sheriff has not been told that they've been set free, that they've been proven innocent. And he's going to make them pay for their crimes. He's going to hang them. He's going to put an end to it. And so as they're sitting there, being ready to be executed, Clooney's character begins to pray. And the other two that's been traveling with him are baffled by this because they have come to faith through their journey. They've come to believe in God through their journey. And Clooney's character begins to pray. And as he looks down with the noose around his neck, he sees water flowing beneath him. And lo and behold, here comes a massive flood that sets him free. And then the next scene, you see they're floating along. And the two guys look over at him and say, "Isn't it awesome the way that God works?" And Clooney begins to tell him, "What do you mean? This flooding has been planned they've been planning to flood this zone for days, for weeks now. We knew it was going to happen." And in spite of the evidence, okay, I know it's just a movie, but in spite of evidence, we see people like this every day. That in spite of evidence, in spite of things happening just the way they looked at God and asked for Him to, they refuse to believe. They refuse to acknowledge that God had anything to do with it. So what does it take for us to believe? What does it take for you? For some, it's seeing your true nature from God's perspective. Others need a supernatural experience or answered prayer. Still others are convicted just by the character of Jesus. How His love for us was stronger than our hate for Him. So what does it take? I think if somebody's truly and honestly seeking God, Christ is going to meet them just like He met Thomas. If you really want to know Thomas, here, do you believe? You know, and I think some of us are much like the man that needed Jesus to heal his son, if you could. You know, I've cracked this joke with a lot of people. We pray for rain, and a lot of times I'll ask people, just put your umbrella in your car. Well, no, there's no rain in the forecast. I know. Is it a, Jesus, if you can, will you bring us rain? Or is it God? Because the power you have, because we know who you are, we seek you for more rain. And because I know how powerful you are, and I know that the weather can change in the blink of an eye in Kansas, I'm going to grab my umbrella and throw it in the car. I think many of us are in that same boat as Thomas. But if I could just, or the guy, just help my unbelief. I have these areas I struggle with. But I don't think Jesus is ready to punish us for those doubts. Not ready to punish us for wanting to see the holes in His hand, wanting to put our hand in His side. That's not what He's seeking. What He's seeking is you really willing to submit when He gives you an answer. That you'll really, truly say, I believe, my Lord, my God. Or, in spite of the evidence, do you deny the claim? That's a tough spot in life. And I think that's one of the reasons I like the story of Thomas so much. It's because I can put myself right in Thomas's shoes many, many points in my life. And to be completely honest, I don't know that I'm done putting myself in Thomas's shoes. I'm sure there'll be times in my life come about. But I'm like, really? This is what you have in store for me, God? This is really what you want to do? No, it can't be. Doubt should bring questions. Questions should bring seeking and answers. That's the cool part about our faith, is that we are allowed to question. We are allowed to ask God, what's going on? Why me? Well, Jake, because at one point, you stood there in the midst of the dry bones and said, send me. So now I'm sending you. I think you got this mistaken, God. That wasn't me. Help thou unbelief. Help me with my doubts. Help me to truly and purely cry out, my Lord, my God. As we went through all these characters in John, one thing I want you to take away from this whole series is that through every encounter, when we've come to pretty much this point, when I step off the stage, it's the same thing with every person. That they have come to a point in their life where they have looked at Jesus and realized the divine power within him. Some because they poked the hole and they put their hand in his side. Some just because of the authority that his character demanded. Some because of the way he testified. Some because of the miracles he performed. For each and every person, it was a different circumstance in a different time on which they cried out, my Lord, my God. Even with Pilate, even with the guy that tried to take the easy way out. No, the conversion wasn't with Pilate, but it was one of his understudies, who led hundreds upon hundreds of soldiers who knelt at the end of the cross and said, surely this was the Son of God. We serve a Savior that I think we honestly could have walked away from in his day and time. That we could have thought he was crazy. We could have very easily doubted. But one encounter with him, a few minutes of your time with him, as we've seen time and time again, he changed their life. He took a woman at the well and turned her into a missionary. He took Thomas' doubt and turned it into complete surrender. That's what he wants to do for each and every one of us, is to have an encounter that changes the spiritual trajectory of our life for the rest of eternity. Well, Jake, I'm pretty solid. I'm pretty set on knowing that I'm going to heaven. And I applaud you for that. But if you think you've got it made, and you think you've got it solid, and you're done, that's scary. I'm sorry, but it is. God has put a challenge on your life to seek him eternally. To seek him until death. Not until you're certain of heaven, but until death. Because he continually wants to change the spiritual outlook and the spiritual outcome of your life. He continues to want to grow you and nurture you into something very, very special. So do you believe? Or does thou need help with thy unbelief? Pray with me. Father God, we thank you so much for this time to be in your house. We thank you that we have the privilege and opportunity to come together. And Father, as we know, many have doubts throughout life, the ups and downs. And sometimes, Father, it's more in the ups when we begin to doubt because we're in control. But little do we know. And so, Father, I just ask that as we deal with those doubts in our own ways, and we struggle with what's going on in our life, that we seek you each and every opportunity, so that we can be changed eternally by you. That the spiritual outlook of our life is never set, that you're always working and continuing to grow each one of us. To your Son's name we pray. Amen.